Hello! Welcome back to Westeros.org's video series. It's been a good while since Linda and I have published a video, but with good reason as we've been pretty busy of late.
If you're wondering what's going on screen, this is footage from the Marble Arch Geopark, specifically its nature walk along the Claddagh River. We'll talk a bit more about that a bit later, but first it seems only appropriate to discuss the big news that was released today by HBO because it's very topical.
We had hints from people who would know that there was news coming relevant to Northern Ireland, but it's clear from this press release that this is what they were referring to, because it's all about the fact that HBO is establishing permanent Game of Thrones attractions in Northern Ireland with a tentative date of 2019. It sounds really interesting, sounds very exciting. It's kind of a mini Universal Studios focused entirely on Game of Thrones, but using actual filming locations rather than just bringing it all under one roof.
Here are the key points to this Game of Thrones legacy project, as they call it. Standing sets from Winterfell, Castle Black and King's Landing will be set up, apparently in or near their actual filming locations. These sites would also have costumes, props, set decorations, art files, models and other production materials. There will be digital content and interactive materials as a part of the experience, showcasing the digital wizardry of the series and enhancing the whole visit to each site. And finally, there would also be a formal tour experience at the Linen Mill Studios where some of the show was filmed.
That's all very exciting news for tourism in Northern Ireland. They've been working very hard to promote their country as Game of Thrones territory, and things like this are going to be a big boost for them. In fact, tourism is why we were there a week before last, because Tourism Northern Ireland, their kind of official tourism promotion agency, reached out and asked us if we'd be interested in coming over for the Winterfell Festival at Castle Ward, which is famous as a filming location as Winterfell, and actually the state was used for a lot of other things besides. And also we'd maybe see some other filming locations that we had missed. So yeah, the fact that they were going to have Mark Addy and Ian McElhinney as guests at that event, Boyd Rankin, one of the weapon makers who we know pretty well, was going to be there with a bunch of weapons from the show. It was hard to pass up and see, what was going on. They had thousands of people in the first festival. It would seem like it'd be a great time. The 4 days we spent there were great fun, if kind of hectic. We flew in on the Friday from Gothenburg, went to our hotel from Belfast City Airport, which is really central, really convenient. It's like 10 minutes from central Belfast, really nice. After we changed and so on, we went to dinner at Ox, which is one of the 2 Michelin-starred restaurants in Belfast. Very different experience from a standard restaurant, I could say that. Adds a bit of mystery and excitement to it all. We had never been to a Michelin-starred restaurant, and everything was fantastic. They kind of presented a tasting menu with lots of little dishes, and they told you, these are the ingredients we're using, what are your dietary restrictions, and then they just brought out things using those ingredients, and it was great, it was good fun. Ox is also famous for having these Game of Thrones knives that were custom made for them. We did not see that one, but it did look really nice. We saw some photos, so that's pretty cool.
The Ox closed out the first night and we went back to the hotel to get some rest because we were going to have a very long day the next day. It started bright and early at 8:30 when we were driven off towards County Fermanagh, which was a 2-hour car drive. It took us through the little island town of Enniskillen, which we visited during our previous tour of Northern Ireland, where we saw the Game of Thrones doors 2 years ago. But this time we had a different destination, the Marble Arch Geopark, a UNESCO site famed for its show cave and which also features a lovely nature walk along the Claddagh River. This is the Claddagh Glen Nature Walk, and behind us we have one of the 3 rivers that runs into the Marble Arch cave system. And before we decided to do this lovely little walk in the woods around, we actually went down into the Marble Arch caves and had a guided tour. I'm not generally much of a cave person. I never thought I would be going down into a cave. I'm a little worried about enclosed spaces and spiders, but it was a great experience. We had a guy that explained everything about the caves to us, the various limestone formations. There are some amazing limestone formations in their stalactites, stalagmites, and various other shapes that you get from the calcite dripping down through the roof. Don't believe these particular caves were actually used for the Game of Thrones filming, but we are going to be seeing another cave nearby which was used. But if you are in the area doing any of the Game of Thrones tours, you absolutely have to visit the Marble Arch caves as well. Definitely amazing to see the underworld of Ireland, and I can understand why people in the past were quite superstitious about going into the caves, obviously believing that they led to the actual underworld, but didn't see any pixies down there.
Now, I personally have never been in a cave before, and I admit, my touchstone for these things are largely, J.R.R. Tolkien. Finrod Finnegan delving in Nargothrond, and Gimli exclaiming about the caverns of Helm's Deep, and so on. But I did think a little bit at one point that, this is the kind of place that the children of forest might have hidden themselves away in.
It was my first cave experience as well, and I have to say it was very impressive. The underground river that runs through the whole cave certainly added a lot to the ambience, as did the place where a perfectly still pool reflected the limestone above it. They called it their mini Atlantis because you'd see the stalactites reflected underwater and see like a little city under the still surface. After Marble Arch, it was a car trip on to find a rural road that led to the Polnagollum cave. Behind me are the Polnagollum caves, used in Season 3 as the hideout for the Brotherhood Without Banners. This is where Beric and company took the Hound and Arya, and where the Hound and Beric battle, and then Thoros resurrects Beric after the Hound has killed him. The caves are quite inaccessible, actually. We can't go down here today. The gate is locked, and this way here is a couple of very steep steps that you have to go down. So carting all the equipment and the actors down here must have been quite tricky, because you're supposed to get far down here and in behind the waterfall that you can hear and see.
And then another quite long car trip to get us up to Ballycastle on the northern coast. That's where we would meet our next guide, Flip Robinson of Giant Tours Ireland. We first heard from our contacts over at Tourism and I that Flip had been a stand-in for Christian Nairn, who played Hodor, and Hafthor Bjornsson, who played Mountain. So, as you can guess, he's quite a tall guy. He provided us a lot of great anecdotes of his time on set as he drove us up to Fairhead, the first, filming location we were going to see with him.
We're here on the stunning Antrim coast, and I am standing more or less where Jon Snow was standing at one point out on Dragonstone, and behind me the Fairhead Cliffs, which are of course the cliffs of Dragonstone if you're in Westeros. This amazing bit of landscape and continues if you look out here to the right, where you've got the Rathlin Island, and then beyond it is actually the coast of Scotland. You can almost see it in the mist there. The Irish Sea, and then out there the Atlantic, and maybe a little grey and rainy today, but it's quite a stunning landscape anyway. As you can see, it gets very windy up there, and there's nothing but sheep and boulders and grass. Well, and an amazing sweeping view. One thing we did not know was that Fairhead is considered a prime climbing spot, and in fact they've held climbing festivals there. We actually ran into a pair of climbers that Flip was friendly with while we were up there. Apparently Farmer Sean, that's what the folks at Tourism NI call him, he's the one who owns the land, had a number of stories about the filming there, and his sons had great fun driving around the four-wheelers that were pulling the wheeled green screens around, for one thing.
There are at least 4 specific scenes filmed here on Fairhead. Here's an example of one of them. This is John and Danny together from season 7, and we kind of did a little recreation shot that Flip provided for us at his Instagram.
After Fairhead, we went on to Murlough Bay, which we used, of all things, as Slaver's Bay and Marine. You wouldn't expect to find that in Northern Ireland. But you can see these bushes and small trees, they're quite bent thanks to the wind, and that makes them very distinctive. And in this shot, you can see them right behind Tyrion. So, that's the spot. And the cove is the place where Tyrion and Jorah are captured by slavers. Again, we didn't expect to find that one in Northern Ireland, but they managed to find just the right bit of beach that looked southern enough, essentially. It's a fairly remote piece of coast. It's not reachable by the larger coaches, but Giant Tours Ireland uses minivans. We can get right in there. We actually parked where Renly met with Stannis in season 2. More about that particular scene in the next video, though.